All right, good morning and welcome to Career Navigators providing support services virtually. We have 3 programs represented today, and we're very happy. They're 3 very different programs, and we did that on purpose so that you have lots of different ideas to share with you. So I'm going to introduce them as we go along. I'm going to start with our first presentation from Lucas Robinson from ROE 33, and he's going to tell you a little bit about his program, so I'll stop there. But Lucas, if you want to unmute and start sharing, that would be great.
Do I really need to start sharing just to confirm? Is everybody?
No. I'm sorry. I just sharing your information. That's what.
Great. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the hiccup. I'm Lucas Robinson, and I'm from the ROE 33. That's our emblem at the top, and I developed this presentation called Developing Relationships with Service Providers. And I guess specifically, it is less about the word virtual and more about the situation of remote or hybrid, and about smoothing out the process of acquiring the services. And why I thought, I guess we could start with this list of sort of word soup, that these are our service providers that we are partnered with. And I'm assuming that many of these are not yours specifically, but you have something similar that corresponds. And this is just an idea of what some of those service providers are out there and how exhaustive that list can be. These are, just to make a note, our partner service providers. And so we actually have formal arrangements with each of these. And part of the theme of this presentation is how we've inverted or kind of changed our perspective from an obligation to these organizations into sort of leveraging their responsiveness instead. And I guess we can go to the next slide. And this kind of describes why I thought we could bring a little bit of a different perspective to the forum. We are, from my understanding, one of the largest ROEs in the state, and we're not housed in a community college. And you can see this is our physical jurisdiction. And if you need an orientation, there is the Mississippi is the curvy line over on the left. And now we can go down to the next slide. It's a little bit more specific. That describes exactly where we are and why, again, on the right, why we're maybe a little bit different. We're housed in 2 sites, and we incorporate an alternative high school as part of the demographics that we serve, in addition to, as you can see, the adult education program and the ESL program. And as such, as an ROE, just before we move ahead to the next slide, we were kind of positioned, I think, at the beginning of the changes that we normally looked for most of our services, in addition to these programs, with external service providers. And so we kind of had a foot in the door when things went remote, that we had some relationships started and had, I guess, a perspective towards the outside and towards what other sources can help us internally. And I think we can go to the next slide. These are specifically some of those things that accessing services from outside agencies, I guess, were problematic to begin with. I'll just read through these, and they sound familiar. Accessing services from the outside agencies can be cumbersome. Frequently, the processes are uncoordinated, especially when there's sort of concurrent enrollments or dual services being offered. I'll kind of touch into this a little bit later, but there were different kinds of challenges to just sharing data between agencies. And again, because of the nature of tying these services together, that delay really affected kind of the relationship with the students and them pursuing their general adult basic education, because they didn't coordinate with maybe the semester timeline or the rate of which they were advancing. And then of course, finally, we're all seeing reduced and restricted services in certain areas. And I guess I should give a shout out to Michelle, because this ties into the overall reason why we're engaging our students this way. This becomes the hook that really retains your students and develops the trust and the relationships that you can have to introduce their opportunities. And if these things are slow, and I especially feel this way, that they can actually contribute to being the barrier if they're not coordinated, or you're offering something that you can't provide, which is ultimately really what I feel is why this requires a lot of attention. Okay, so we can go on to the next slide after our shout out to Michelle. And this, we use WIOA, and this is the bulk of our presentation here. Now that I'll try to get down into the weeds and the nuts and bolts. WIOA was kind of our case study for a strategy to reorient good relationships with our service providers. WIOA is central because, as we've heard earlier and yesterday, they're the money. And so they're central to the partnership and opening up opportunities for your students. So just a quick background is that they know that. And I think that they are sometimes realize that they're the center of the agency's associations. So we made a deliberate attempt and specifically sat down and talked about how we can change the relationship with WIOA. They actually, I think, do a lot of their strategizing in the summer, spring, and fall, which is really a tough time for us to engage with them. And so we had this kind of perception that neither party was matching up to their obligations. And so we sat down and tried to fix all this. And one of the ways we did it was to be demonstrative about our commitment to responding to their communications and whatever their wishes were and some of their peripheral programs. And that involves some of the next line, the active participation in area partner meetings and trainings, that we were able to provide help for them in their corollary objectives and demonstrate that we were ready to meet our obligations and had a new foot forward that really sort of got their attention and set the stage for what was going to happen. This is kind of all pre-pandemic. And while we were doing that, we were researching and inquiring about their programs, making contacts with particular program coordinators, determining what the eligibilities were specifically, and even down to exactly how they were processing their applications so we could smooth that out or meet them halfway and make that process as easy as we could when we introduced our students to them to be potentially their clients. And actually through one of these partner organizations up in the middle line called the APC, and I'm not sure, maybe some of you guys belong to similar councils that kind of organize these interagency partnerships. We were able to step up and provide useful help in this area where data sharing was a real problem. People have different software. There's conditions about sharing personal information and just things to be sensitive about. And so we were able to step up and help WIOA do this and help our other partners. And that fed a long way into some other opportunities. And now we can move to the next slide. The first results, and these are kind of supposed to be post-pandemic. I'll review that pattern in the next couple slides, but we ended up with greater reception of our program's needs and considerations from WIOA already. We've established first-person communication lines, like I mentioned earlier, with particular people, and we've increased the responsiveness of our students' application process. The students are discerned from public or regular walk-ins. And this is kind of what I'll try to revisit if I remember at the end, but that all of this is kind of, WIOA has, instead of expecting us to come asking for assistance, opportunity, and attention, they have now come to us understanding that we would be able to manage those expectations, but that they have opportunities for us. And so we were able to secure some funding from them to implement some key components of a bridge program, which was just recently installed, which we're pretty happy about. And in addition to that, we were able to partner with our post-secondary partner, education provider, and that's Carl Sandburg, so that their CTE division has partnered with us in the same way. As a source for their recruiting, of course, into the credit side of the house, but as obligatory partners also, that we've all come together to create this opportunity for students. And also, in addition to that, the plus sign at the end is that WIOA has also kind of reached out to share another form. They've partnered with our truancy department as an ROE. We manage that for our local school districts and created a dropout program. So in more ways than one, they've reached out to try to extend their funding that they have available. So we're really happy about all of this kind of coming together during these uncertain times. So it's kind of a nice silver lining. And continuing to the next slide, you can see that there's an integration tool and this referral process. Thank you. That was good timing. Worked well when we were looking for alternative options for our childcare issues, which of course are of reduced availability at this point. So what we did was we realized that we had a resource internally at the ROE, and this is hopefully one thing, if you yourself are not an ROE, could be a possibility, that we have a staff of parent educators, and they're categorized from 0 to 3, 3 to 6, and 6 to 9, I believe. And they all have their own personal specialties. And so we were able to kind of provide a tutoring service and support service for those people who couldn't access childcare any longer. And we have ongoing conversations about those parent educators and our collaborations that will hopefully extend to having childcare in our sites, in addition to integrating this new resource for the new situation. Part of the referral form that we made for WIOA and cataloging all these services extended to this kind of internal search for what other kinds of resources and opportunities were available. And that created another discussion, which ended up with us organization-wide cataloging and transferring our referral process to a digital form so that it is more available to everybody. And that has been sort of a byproduct of this original reaching out to WIOA, just to keep that connection going. Now we can go to the next slide and we'll show you what kind of things ended up. Oh, maybe one too far. There we go, that's great. Is that we made a discovery of these secondary and extended resource points. This is this kind of counterintuitive label I've been using for at-home childcare resources, which are offered by our parent educators. Just one concrete resource that they've been able to provide is we found 3 additional sources for free diapers and 2 other points of retrieval for those resources. And those have all been incorporated already. One of the things that I heard Kathy Olson-Tracy talking about yesterday was how when we do look to make changes, that they can be integrated as permanent updates. And that's kind of one of the things that we expect to retain as part of our childcare services, is that they'll be constantly referred to parent educators, when we kind of just did that in a case-by-case basis to begin with. And internally, we, again, systematically are cataloging our services and making them available to all of our clients on a wider basis. One of the things that I said that these parent educators have specialties in addition to their regular duties, in one case happened to be a transit committee that was going on without my knowing of it at all. And just because I had a conversation and kind of stuck my head in the middle of something I didn't know about, I asked somebody, what were you doing there? Who were you talking to? And discovered that there was a whole discussion, and you can move to the next slide, thank you, Sarah, about transportation that was going on behind my back. Not really behind my back, but of course on the other side of the building. And that led to a pretty, I think, significant development, is that we began this collaboration and I got sort of a backstory. I took advantage of a lot of work that had already been done by some of our other partners. And that's part of the sharing networks and contact of decision makers, which is I found out who to talk to. I found out what the issues were and what the state of the drama was. And the backstory is that we had a non-responsive transit authority locally. And during the pandemic, the management and civic authorities changed, and they've made a new pivot to customer orientation. Because we had these previous conversations going, and because I was able to access them and interject myself into those conversations, we kind of combined forces, which was my first objective, to negotiate a purchase price of bus passes for all of our students and other clients of the ROE. We were able to not buy them as individual departments or as needed, but across the organization found out what our needs were and made the purchase of the bus passes. But also that discussion of bus passes brought up, and we can move to the next slide, it's the big reveal sort of, that this new management system of the transit authority, we can go back one more, almost there. Thank you, Sarah. And I guess we can move down to the second slide, or second, sorry, heading, I should say. Not establishment of the ROE, place at the table at civic transit discussions. That the transit authority, to make a long story short, realized their shortcoming in not being oriented towards customer service. And they have like restaffed and repivoted and restructured. And we were at the top of the list for who they wanted to contact about how they can extend their services. And not only were they very helpful when I reached out to them about bus passes, but really piggybacked that whole idea to say, can we extend to you an offer of running a pilot program, which has been a long discussion about matching the bus transportation routes and times of service to the times that we run our night classes. So as a result, we just being in the right place at the right time, advocating for your students has, in several ways that we wouldn't have anticipated. We wouldn't have thought WIO would ever have been responsive. We wouldn't have thought that the transit authority would have been a movable entity. But in all of these cases, they've actually not just responded, but have reached out with an offer of some sort to help our students. So I think if we move down to the last slide, this is sort of the, when Bevan asked about the presentations, I didn't have a handout to provide. So I thought this could be like a cheat sheet that you can print and take away with you. We made some everyday points that work all the time. And of course, I was talking about WIOA mostly, but hopefully you can extrapolate that relationship to whatever other service provider is not the smoothest process yet. And that is to just basically reach out and be proactive. And I don't want to sound preachy about that, but that's keeping it simple, right? And it may be something you're already doing, but you can use this as to kind of keep coaching yourself when you run into that service provider that's not responsive. I was sure to come with something in hand. And I think we heard this earlier from Laura Williams yesterday about they have obligations too. They have numbers to meet. And if you offer bulk amount of clients to them, they will respond. And then when you call, or not necessarily call, or whatever, reach out, that you're not asking necessarily, you'll get to that and they'll hear you when you say, my students need this, but you want to represent the opportunity for them to fulfill their obligations. And so they're much more likely to respond to you, just instead of, I think it's kind of a gut reaction to describe how needy maybe one of your students is. And that, I think, ultimately just puts them in competition with people who are also in need. And that's a tough position for the service provider to be in or respond to you that way. So instead, you kind of reframe it this way as, look how me calling you can help you. And that again is knowing your context processes a little bit. I'm kind of curious if WIOA in your guys' areas are as kind of old school. We actually have to use a hard copy questionnaire still and fax it to them or email a attachment to them. And we've actually had to go so far as their their questionnaire asks for 4 digits of a social security number, and talking to their actual receptionist instead of a program coordinator, we found that actually they need all 8 digits. And that just cuts out one round of exchange if you can know those kinds of things.
Lucas,
yes.
I think that's a good segue as you're thinking about what other programs are doing. I thank you very much for sharing, but I want to make sure we have time to listen to hear from our other 2 programs. So thank you. If you have any questions for Lucas, he's going to be here. So put those in the chat. And then we'll hopefully have a little bit of time at the end also. But thank you very much for sharing. And I'm going to let the Triton duo bring up their slides at this point while I introduce Megan Young-Stevens and Denise Guzman. And let me make that. There we go. All right. And we'll let them take it away.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Thanks for including us here. Denise and I are really happy to be here. We both work as completion and transition specialists at Triton College. You can see our lovely campus here on the slide. It's beautiful and green and really empty right now. Now it's kind of red, reds and yellows, but it's empty now. It's without students. We're here alone. And so we've been working to develop strategies in these last 7-8 months to learn how to support our students better in this virtual remote environment when we don't have our students with us on campus anymore. How can we continue to do the work that we've done in the past to offer the support that we want to be able to do as advisors, as transition specialists at a distance? So we're here to share a few of the things that we've learned so far. We're still learning. We're excited to be learning with the folks today and hear from Joliet after this as well for other strategies. But the 2 kind of threads that we have to spotlight on today is how we've been using text messaging to connect with our students, and also how we've been trying to really keep our students engaged by recognizing and celebrating their accomplishments, even when we can't do it in person. So those are the kind of two main topics. We've had some really great analogies and metaphors at this conference so far. I loved Michelle at Joliet's analogy from earlier about the geese, if some folks have seen that. One metaphor that I found helpful to think about how we're reaching students at a distance is thinking about in March, April, how we were all kind of thrown into the deep end of virtual learning, and how kind of overwhelming and intimidating it can feel, like you're just learning how to tread water. You're not sure what's up yet. You're not sure how to navigate all of these new systems. I don't know if anyone else here felt that way, but I definitely did. And I think a lot of our students did. And I think it's useful to keep in mind that kind of analogy as we think about how our students continue to connect with their classes now that they're online. Even though we've been doing this online thing for a while, there's still a lot to navigate, and it can be an intimidating and overwhelming process for a student to learn and adjust to having a class that was, they're used to studying in person, now through a platform like this, navigating learning management systems, communication with instructors in different ways, testing in remote environments. There's a lot to juggle. And so I think one of the ways that I can see, one of the parts of a career navigator job right now that I see is trying to kind of build for students some nice steps down into a pool, some nice kind of easier way to get students where we need them to be so they can be successful, they can adapt as they go, and they can be successful in their online classes rather than kind of leaving them to sink or swim, leaving them to fend for themselves. One thing that we've discovered is that it's easy to assume if we haven't heard from a student that they're struggling, that they're good, that they know what they have what they need, they know how to connect, they have the technology access and the know-how. And one of the things that we've learned quickly is that we probably shouldn't make those assumptions. If we haven't heard from a student, we shouldn't assume much. They might be great, they might be good to go, they might know just how to connect with their class, they might be feeling great, but they might be they might be feeling like they're drowning a bit. They might be overwhelmed. We might lose that student and they might not be successful in our program if we don't take the extra proactive outreach to really check in, see how they're doing and see how we can help. So for that reason, we started using texting a lot. We're huge believers in texting students now. It's our new favorite thing. We think it's probably something we should have been doing for a long time. But we've just started it because of COVID, and we're glad that we did. We use Google Voice to do a lot of check-ins with students early in the semester, kind of proactive. How's it going? Do you have what you need? How can we help? It's a way of communicating that's accessible for students. They're using it anyway. It's comfortable. They might feel more at ease communicating with us that way. We get way better response than we have in the past through emails and phone calls. And it's a really good way to kind of take that first step toward building a relationship. If we think about the metaphor of the stairs, that first step toward building a relationship with us, connecting them with support. And then from establishing that relationship, then we can guide them through the Zoom or the learning management systems or the online testing and through those other more difficult things that are a little bit more of a leap. I also want to say that the human connection we all know is so important, and it's so important to lead with empathy in these times. And texting allows us to do that too. I kind of took for granted that texting was only at first to disseminate information and that it wasn't necessarily good for relationship building. I don't think that's true from what we've seen. Sometimes students feel really comfortable doing more kind of deep advising sessions over text and feel really comfortable confiding with us in us and communicating in that way. And I have just a couple of examples of that, of conversations that we've had with students using text messages to kind of guide them through difficulties and barriers that they've experienced and come to us with. These are screenshots from Google Voice. We love Google Voice. We can send messages and links and screenshots through Google Voice. So it's really great in lots of ways. So these are just screenshots here. This student texted me. This is a new student to our program who I had actually already communicated with quite a bit. We had done a Zoom call together and looked at Blackboard, which is our learning management system. I had gotten her the login that she needed. We had already spent a lot of time together. I kind of thought that I had answers to all her questions. I thought that she was good to go, but then she sent me a screenshot saying, hey, there's nobody in my class. And it turns out it was because she was logging in on a Monday. Her class only meets on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. It's a synchronous class. So it was a really easy thing to clear up just with a little bit of texting communication. Having her send me the screenshot showed me just what she was looking at, made it really clear where the confusion was, how I could help. And so we were able to get her all squared away and her questions answered for her class the next day. I will also mention now, speaking of texting, I forgot to mention at the beginning that Denise is watching the chat during this. So if you have any questions or anything as we go along and you want to type them in the chat, even though I won't be looking at that, she will, and she can answer questions there. One more example from a student texting conversation. A lot of times instructors in our programs reach out to Denise and me about students who are struggling, who they haven't seen for a while. We have close relationships with the instructors in the program. We really encourage them to let us know as students might have barriers. And so we send these checking in texts. Hey, we haven't heard from you for a while. Everything okay? Anything we can do to help? And what I've included here is an example of one student's response and a type of response that we see a lot. We see students who are facing incredible barriers. This person has illness in their family, incredible stress, is a caregiver for a parent and for children, and works full time, and trying to juggle too many GED classes at once. A student with a lot of barriers that we never would have known about if she didn't feel comfortable opening up to us via text. So I think this is a good, and we get a lot of texts like this. I was surprised that so many students are comfortable sharing really personal information over text messages often. And I always give students the option. For a student like this, we talk about her options. I say, feel free to call me if you like. But a lot of times students opt instead of a call to do these kind of conversations over text, and we can get good information with in that way, good information to guide the student, help them with their options, help offer support, empathy, and compassion, and also help them find a plan for how they can be successful in their program. So texting, we love it. If you're not doing it already, we recommend doing it. If you are, do it more. Try to join our team and think of more ways to use texting, because it's just the more we've done, the better in terms of connecting with our students. The other thing besides text messages that we've really been trying to focus on as career navigators at Triton is how to recognize and celebrate our students' successes, even when we can't do it in person. So we had some virtual recognition and graduation ceremonies this year. We found it really successful to invite students who have already made the transition to college or career to come and speak with our new students at virtual orientation events. It helps build some great relationships. It helps our new students feel welcomed, feel encouraged, feel like they can follow in this other person's footsteps. And it also is, I was really pleased and surprised at how enthusiastic the response was from the graduates who we invited back. Most of them were very, very excited to be able to share their experience. And because everything's virtual these days, it's a much smaller ask than it has been in the past. It still takes a lot of courage to join a Zoom call if you're a graduate of our GED program, for instance, and say some words to your peers, but it's a lot easier if you don't have to travel to campus, if you don't have to kind of make time in your schedule to do a physical class visit, but instead can just click on a link. So consider really making use of the student graduates, and we do that on Facebook too. We've been trying to really spotlight and showcase some of the successes of our program completers. On the left here is Rosa, or Rosie. She is a GED graduate and completer of the radiology program at Triton. And we were gonna do we just started a healthcare hero of the month, and she's the first person who we've kind of spotlighted for that. And when I asked her about this, she asked us to actually tag her in the Facebook post because she wanted to be able to share it with her family and friends, her network. So we're all excited to have our accomplishments kind of recognized and celebrated. And the same is true for our students. So we can definitely use that. Videos, photos, the more the better. Our program is right now planning a virtual project college event for current students. And we're looking for ways and exploring how we can kind of do a similar thing with that event. Bring in those current success stories, bring in those student graduates to help inspire the current students in our programs. So just kind of a quick overview, our takeaways. Make sure to be proactive, follow students' lead, communicate with them the way that they want us to communicate with them. Use all the tools that you have in your tool belt. Use the texting and the email and the phone calls and everything together. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of kind of flexibility sometimes to get students what they need, but I think it's really worth it. And hopefully this will help all of us build stronger strategies now that we can use going on in these months of remote learning, but also using far into the future beyond that when we're back at campus too. And that concludes our presentation. Feel free to reach out to Denise and me for any questions you might have. If you want to talk about what your program is doing, we love to get ideas and share ideas. So thanks so much for listening and for giving us the opportunity to speak with you all.
Thank you, Megan and Denise. We appreciate it very much. And I appreciate you encouraging us to embrace the messiness. This is a time to try new things for sure. So thank you very much. We're going to turn it over now to our final group, Joliet Junior College, Michelle Lyman and Mandy Dwyer. So let's see, Mandy's bringing her screen up. And I will mute myself and let them get started. Again, let me just say, if you have questions, please put those in the chat.
Well, hi, everybody. It's always nice to follow people who say things that you also agree with and are doing and hopeful for. And as you were talking, I remembered we have a virtual Discover JJC event coming up that we're also participating in. It's just really cool to get excited about what you're doing. And then as you hear other people talking, oh yeah, we're going to do something like that. We should totally talk about it. So thanks for the great lead-ins and the shout outs. We are from JJC. I'm Mandy, Dwyer. I'm the ESL instructional coordinator. I'm the only one on here that's probably not a navigator or specialist or career and transition person, but I work so closely and we've kind of drawn together as a team in these very weird times to brainstorm. And I think one of the fun things talking to Sarah about what we've been doing was we jump in and talk to each other so often that it's exciting to share the responsibility and to talk. But I want to say how proud I am of all that Michelle Lyman shared earlier today. So if it sounds familiar, it's because she shared some fantastic ideas and so many of them are interwoven that it's fun to hear them over again. And also they impact several places simultaneously. So from adult education at JJC, we're talking about how adult education can do virtually anything. Michelle Lyman is very good at titles.
Thank you. So I want to talk a little bit about advising then and now, because it literally is a day and night experience. COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, well, COVID and then post-COVID. So in the past, we would do advising, make an appointment. The student would have to find a place to park in downtown Joliet, which can be challenging given the limited places to park. Then walk the block or so to campus, go up 3 flights of stairs or the elevator, sit in the waiting room. And then by the time they get to my office, they're physically and mentally exhausted. So, you know, I would usually get about a 50% show rate for my advising appointments with my students. And that was disappointing. But what I've noticed now that we're doing this virtually is I'm getting about a 95% show rate. People don't need to park anymore. They can just hop on Zoom. It only takes a few minutes. I can be very flexible in my scheduling because if somebody needs a weekend, a night, an early morning appointment, it's really not that big a deal for me to either pull up my cell phone or my laptop, have the meeting for a few minutes, and then even if it's on the weekend when I don't normally work, go back to my normal life. And that really has helped with my work-life balance. Advising now, I do encourage you to make it mobile friendly. It's not always ideal, but I have done advising appointments with people who are on their lunch break and will call me from their cars because they're working and now they don't have to miss work. I've also done a little bit of advising while I'm driving myself. I don't highly recommend it. It's kind of like texting and talking, but it is something that I've been able to do and in some extreme cases. And I love that it's a shared experience. And you really wouldn't think that virtual advising is a shared experience, but we can now share our screen. So if I'm helping somebody fill out their FAFSA or their JJC application, I can share my screen or they can share their screen and we can walk through this together. And so it's just one of those things where I feel like it's now become 2 or 3 people that can share in advising rather than me just talking at or to the student and they get that blank stare. Now they've got some hands-on experience. And of course, right now, virtual advising is incredibly efficient. It's quick, it's fast, it's user-friendly. And so I'm thrilled that I'm actually, getting a 95% show rate because I'm able to reach more people and they're more comfortable. So I highly advise virtual advising. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Zoom meetings, right? We've all had this. We all had to learn what Zoom was. I thought Zoom was this 70s television show with, kids that sang from Boston. And how about Robbins? And probably some of you are probably young to know this, but let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So some of the good things about Zoom is it does connect us, right? We can get on and talk to virtually anybody when right now, folks, it's not really safe to gather. There is a very short learning curve. I, like I said, had never heard of Zoom, didn't know what Zoom was. And I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to learn this? But I didn't have an option, right? If I wanted to be able to communicate with my colleagues and with my students, then I'm like, yep, you're going to learn this. So I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and you can record your lessons. So if somebody can't join your class, they can go back and look at it. And the other thing too is if I was in a meeting, I can go back instead of having to always take notes and see, oh, yep, that's what they were talking about. Now here's one more good thing. You don't have to wear pants, folks. They only see you from here up. You can be in your pajamas. You can wear shorts. Really, pants are not required anymore. The bad. There are distractions, and I'm going to tell you, I'm surprised my dog is not barking right now. I did bring a pack of carrots so that if she does, I shouldn't have said that, here she comes. If she did start barking, I could throw one in the family room and she would stop barking. But you do have kids that are gonna run right past your, screen or throw a toy, dogs barking. You're gonna always have the Amazon guy coming, and yes, Zoom can be distracting, but we've learned in this time to give each other a lot of mercy and grace. I used to lock the dog upstairs during a meeting and have my kids babysit her and say, guys, help me out. And then I was on with the president of JJC, and the Amazon guy rang the doorbell and her dog went nuts. And I thought, you know what? It's okay, folks, it's okay. Another bad thing, mute, right? How many of us have talked? I mean, literally something very passionate deep down, and then they're like, oh, can't hear you, mute. Or you wish you could really just mute somebody, right? Hit mute. I do not need to hear you in the middle of a meeting canceling your vacation plans. That has happened.
It happened.
That happened, that's true. And then the ugly about Zoom. Folks, we have seen everybody's kitchens, bedrooms, and I'm not kidding, bathrooms. I was actually advising, and there was a student in the bathroom, and thank goodness she was just doing hair and makeup and not showering or other things. But I did have to say, maybe you want to turn your video off for that. So there's just some funny things, but Zoom really has given us an opportunity to connect with our students virtually. Social media is another way that we can offer support services in this time of crisis. So we have really relied on our Facebook Lives to get information out to our students. Kathy Kramer is fantastic at technology, and she had this crazy idea. She's like, let's interview people, and then we'll put it on Facebook and YouTube, and students can learn about it. And I said, yeah, let's make it homework so that way we'll get more views. And so we sent this out to teachers everywhere, and we said, have your students watch some of these Facebook Lives. We're talking about IETs and bridges and support services and resources to help them. And we had practice. We practiced for like 45 minutes. We went live, and I'm not kidding, nobody could hear. Nobody could hear. I couldn't get my audio to work. And so that does happen. And here we had all these students that had come on because we mandated it as homework. But we were able to record and move on. But the other thing is, social media is another way to share all of these resources. Make sure that when you're on your Facebook page and people ask questions, respond, right? Don't leave them hanging. You want to get out there and have fun with it. You can see Kathy and I are cracking up because the second time we did this, now we made sure my audio was working, and and she said, okay, there's a countdown, 3, 2, and then you'll be live. Well, I decided that at that 3, 2, 1 countdown, my bangs were bugging me. And so I did this because in Zoom, you're opposite. So that's why I have that alfalfa in the middle of my forehead. And we literally had asthma attacks because we couldn't stop laughing, but we were live. So have fun with it. If you're going to go virtual and you're going to use your social media, you have to have fun with it. Your students actually feel more engaged. They feel like, oh, she's human, just like me. And I'm going to echo what Megan and Denise have said. You have to find different ways to communicate with your students. The days of face-to-face meetings are not going to be possible. I'm looking at the numbers. It seems like we're growing more to being quarantined and isolating with each new case of COVID. So find different methods. And we've been doing calling campaigns using our communication center, but I'm telling you the biggest thing is text messaging. Students love to get text messages. They've always have their phones. They may not read your emails. They're certainly, if they're like me, they're not going to answer their phones because who's calling you, right? It's either somebody that wants to, that's overly concerned about your extended warranty on your car, or wants to offer me a vacation in the Caribbean. So, you know, I don't always take the calls, and our students don't take the calls, but they will look at a text message and they respond. And you can use this to send out reminders about activities that are going on, but we're also finding that it's a great recruiting tool. We put out just, you know, something like interested in free classes, text back, email, and then all of a sudden our phones were blowing up in our emails, and I was overwhelmed. I'm like, wow, this really worked. So I highly recommend, and what Megan and Denise are saying from Triton, text messaging.
Oh, and this is where I tend to take over, but let me reflect on what Michelle said as well. The recruitment aspect of texting students directly. I don't know about all of you, recruiting is a struggle to get students into our adult education classes, but at the same time, keeping them engaged in not just their class, but the program is a struggle. So that finding that key of texting your students, and we use the communication center, but we're looking into some of the resources for mass texting that others have recommended, like Textedly. We're actually hoping to get that so we can sort of shorten the process or expand the audience of who we text to recruit, as well as work on retaining and sending information to the current students. So we keep hearing and learning about other ways to use this method. We were just talking to a student who's challenged right now getting resources. And when I called, I went to leave a voicemail and the voicemail was full, and she just keeps sending all calls to voicemail, but she did not leave any email or other method of communication. So the only thing we could think to do, and the only thing we would now think to do, is text her and hope that she gets the information in a more timely manner rather than calling daily. So it can help you shorten your own administrative tasks as well. But talking about the resources and how do you loop in extra resources to support students and their needs in your classes, if you don't already have one, you might be interested in looking into family literacy. If you don't have a grant, you could still do components of it that we have found useful to support students in our classes. So we do have a family literacy grant and an adult volunteer literacy grant. And some of the support services that we looped around these students lovingly, like a cocoon, we were doing prior to getting the grant from the state. And we welcome you to start thinking about doing it with your programs as well. So one thing is, students are feeling isolated. One of those free resources that they might have used before that they're not using now is libraries. A lot of students use them for relief from being at home. They use them for the free Wi-Fi. They use them for a study place. And a lot of the libraries right now are closed to that kind of occupancy. They're very limited if it is available. And the computer labs I know are very constricted. But some of our libraries have actually given preference to our adult learners and give them time to study and do their Zooms in a way that they wouldn't do for, I don't want to say the general pop, but the general population. So see if your libraries and your partnering libraries in the area would be amenable to doing that for your learners if you don't have laptops to lend out, or if the student is uncomfortable loaning out a laptop from you guys. They also have devices for rent, often from the library for an extended period of time, laptops, Kindles, iPads, and often our Zoom classes, and even things like Burlington English, GED Academy, TABE Academy can be done on mobile devices like that. And maybe they don't have Wi-Fi at home. We've run into this. You can also look into finding hotspots from your library if you didn't purchase any of your own. Those are some tough purchases to make for some of our organizations. They usually have a lot of red tape. So see if there are people who can lend them to your students for free of charge. And then too, there's the social aspect. A lot of these libraries are starting to interact socially online. Instead of just offering books, they're offering story times and book clubs and reading clubs. One of our libraries that works with us for family literacy created this cool activity sheet where students go online and every one of these activities can be completed remotely. And you can see each one has a link or it's something that you can do from a book. And students can do this to accumulate their library time and they report it to us or take pictures. But you can also see if your library has some of these things available for your students regardless to help ease the burden of just doing class time. Then school districts, check on a more concentrated manner on which schools are offering families laptops or Chromebooks or other devices for children to use at home for remote learning. And maybe you have a concentrated effort on getting students into times around the classes that their kids are being offered. A lot of them will not take those devices from their kids. They want to take classes at night or do Zooms at night or just do their work at night. But finding out who is offering them and then making sure that that's something available to your adults. They don't think of, oh, my kid has a Chromebook, I should use that. And then I made a concerted effort to sit down with all the staff and all of the teachers that were lined up with this program, ones that we have partnerships with, and said, this is a program we're doing. These are supports we offer and make sure that your students are taking advantage of them. And in this case, make sure that they're doing it because we need to accumulate the hours for the grant. But just knowing and having the teachers share the information is very valuable. Students will see us once or twice, but they see the teachers constantly. This is a photo of one of the family literacy online activities. Thankfully, we have the money to have this family literacy facilitator doing a science experiment with children, but by offering it with the whole family, people get involved. And you might not be able to see, but down here, one of the students is showing off her chicken. It's an actual live pet chicken. So you get that glimpse into people's lives, but you also get this fun activity that they see the kids engaging in. And it really does emphasize to the adult learners the value of their class because they're seeing the direct impact on their kids. Even though no one wants to give kids more screen time right now, but seeing the impact on how, oh, doing this fun activity together, it's not class time, it's fun time. By the way, these two up in the corner are my kids, and there's my hair dropping into the picture. So we did it with them, and this was a soap souffle. You microwave a bar of ivory soap for a minute after you break it into pieces, and it turns into this fluffy mess. And then you can break it apart and make it snow. So fun activities like that, you don't have to make it all about your IET and Bridge, although it's a great way to lead in and say, look, these are great activities. Now let's prep you for the next college and career activity you're going to be doing. So don't forget, if you don't know about them, they do exist. There is an adult volunteer literacy program somewhere near you. I guarantee it because they have great coverage throughout the state, and the Secretary of State grants are wonderful about connecting people to the program nearest them. If you have students who are struggling and they just think that class environment, even with only 3 or 5 or 10 people in their Zoom, is still too much of a struggle, there is tutoring available, and I guarantee pretty much all the programs in the state have a remote capability right now. Ours is completely online, thanks to our literacy specialist, Galina Gartulari. She revamped the whole program, and we had been primarily using the online tutor training before that because it's just convenient and tutors can complete it when they need to. But the tutors are then really prepped to tutor remotely, and they have their own Zoom accounts thanks to joint funding from Adult Ed and Adult Volunteer Literacy. So then students and tutors are completely capable of doing Zoom tutoring completely from when they are trained and then where they are matched and then they continue meeting online. And even in addition to one-on-one tutoring, we have emphasized, and we've had great luck with doing ESL clubs where students meet and just practice that speaking and communication that they really find valuable, no matter what their level. Even after they advance out of ESL, they want to keep practicing, and they can do that in these online clubs, and it's perfectly countable for adult volunteer literacy. I've checked several hundred times. And so if they aren't already doing it, if you know there's a huge need, I would emphasize maybe partnering with your library, seeing if they have an adult outreach person. This is an example of one right here. Tanya Hess is the admin of the Plainfield Public Library ESL Club, and she runs a Zoom, puts it on their Facebook page weekly, and they get a mix of sometimes more tutors than students, but it's slowly growing, and the students really love being able to participate remotely. They often do it while they're out walking at a forest preserve. More and more support beyond these people. There's some fantastic resources. Michelle primarily put this together, so I'll let her take over from here.
Thank you, Mandy. So, supporting our students remotely, At first, I thought it would be challenging. And I think, you know, a lot of our sister institutions really had to start thinking outside of the box. And I think we should really just pat ourselves on the back because in just a few short months, I'm finding all of these great ways that our colleagues, our friends, and then our institution are supporting our students. So one of the things we did is we set up a method of how to give out loaner laptops and hotspots and how to do this safely, but also to be able to manage it. So there's a spreadsheet, you're showing your ID. It really also was something that we couldn't just say we have laptops, but then not be able to deliver those within 24 to 48 hours or have them meet us. So timing was everything on this. And I know, Lucas, you talked about it. You can't offer a service and then have the student wait a week to get it. So trying to meet those needs efficiently is very important. We've also relied heavily on our foundation for emergency funds and CARES Act. So they have given out gift cards to grocery stores, especially for those that are having some food insecurities. And all we have to do is basically fill out a form and say, hey, there's a student in need, would you consider? And they're within 24 to 48 hours, they're reaching out to that student and also providing triage and counseling if they need it. We've had free COVID testing. So we've had pop-ups in our parking lots at main campus where people can come and get free testing. And we also have pop-ups for the Northern Illinois Food Bank. No questions asked, no forms to fill out. You just pull up, pop your trunk, and they put all these groceries in there and then off you drive. And so when you're hungry, that's one thing you don't have to worry about. You don't have to out yourself. You don't have to fill out all these forms proving your income. You just go. And we've even had people say, well, how do I volunteer? You know, I'll wear my mask, I'll distance. So students are doing this too for their community service hours. And of course, then look at your institution for their CARES Act. Ours put out, write down basically how much money you need and how this has affected you. Did you lose your job? And they were giving out anywhere from $500 to $1,000 with this CARES Act money. We also, through our workforce partner, WIOA and Career Services, have hosted a couple of drive-through job fairs, which is really neat. The employers are socially distanced in canopies and tents, and then the students are job seekers drive through from the community, and they can hand their resume, and they can talk from their car to the person in the tent about employment leads. And then really important, you have to have fun, right? You have to engage your students to keep them, to get your retention, to do your recruitment, because there's so much sad and meanness going on in the world right now and scary things. We want to be a place of support. We want to be a place of happiness. We want to be a positive light in this darkness for our adult ed students. So some of the things we did at Joliet Junior College is we hosted a drive-through graduation celebration, and it was the feel-good event of the summer, all the way from the president of the college to people like myself, support staff, turned out, held our signs, cheered, and gave out goodies and certificates. And then we decided, you know, fall's coming. It's really a fun time for families. And, you know, maybe some communities are trick-or-treating and others are not. So we decided to do a virtual parade where we asked teachers, staff, people across the state of Illinois, give us your funny pictures, pets in costumes, or your socially distanced created mask, or your prettiest picture of fall, or some fun things you're doing like pumpkin carving. And we set that to music. Next slide, Mandy.
Yes. There's a delay, sorry.
That's okay.
Uh-oh. It doesn't want us to show it. Oh no. There you go. So this is the graduation picture. And I think Michelle said it best, like this was the feel-good event. She added those balloons herself. She came in with those balloons. We purchased some more. And by we, I mean our other manager bought them and then gave them away to children who attended. But look how happy.
that was a feel-good event. Mm-hmm.
This is still a feel-good event because we haven't closed voting at the moment on some of the cool things and people sent in. And there were a good number of pictures, as well as ones that Michelle and more of our staff unearthed of ourselves in the past. I'm here twice.
So yeah, and so it was a PowerPoint that we put on Facebook, and then we also did on our YouTube channel, and then we sent it to IASA, to a lot of our partners like the Plainfield Library, and just to get out so that people, you know, they know adult ed, yep, it's important, it's academic, it's employment, but it's fun. And this is a great way to make those connections in a time when we're apart. So virtual doesn't have to be, yes.
Our students say over and over, this is not just their academic time. This is often the only time that they really focus on themselves and focus on what they need and what they enjoy. So not just, you know, focusing on grammar and work skills, but then talking and sharing. And especially when COVID first hit, so many of them, I think the first past 3 class meetings I heard from teachers, the students just wanted to talk. They just wanted to get together and see each other's faces again.
And I included the link to our virtual fall fun parade in the comments. I know we're here till 11:15, but I don't think we have time because it's a 5-minute looping video of all the pictures of our teachers and our students and even our friends across the state of Illinois. Up at the top right, that's Kaya Ruth. That's Sarah Goldhammer's dog dressed as a lion. So yeah, and our teacher Carrie Upjohn, she dressed her entire family as powerful women. That's her husband at the very top doing the "we can do it." That's her husband. What a great guy. And we have fun with it. You know, I just encourage you to reach out to your students, to make them feel like they're right there, to go ahead and try things. It's okay. It's okay to be silly. Give yourself mercy and grace because the world could use a lot more of that right now.
I mean, this is not a terribly difficult thing to put together. It took Michelle a lot of time, but that's because she's a perfectionist. And you used PowerPoint, right, Michelle? And set it to music and then saved it to YouTube. So you could even ask, you know, people from the different cohorts and the different groups to share a Zoom picture of their class and say, this is our class picture for this semester, and do the same. It's just feel good fun and a great way to recognize each other. And they might see friends that they didn't know were in classes at the same time. It's just a great way to draw together. I'll stop sharing now though, so that we can have questions. And Sarah, were you very excited to see your dog made it into the Fall Fun Parade?
Of course, yes. Thanks. That's what happens with the JJC group. They suck you in. So anyway, I do want to, in a good way, I do want to, hold on, let's go to, first of all, thank all of our presenters and then see if we have any other questions for all of our presenters. So Lucas from ROE 33, thank you very much for starting us off. And then the Triton duo, Denise Guzman and Megan Young-Stevens. Did I get that right? Or Stevens Young? Young-Stevens, right. Yes. Sorry, Megan. I was gonna mess your name up. And then of course the Joliet women, Michelle Lyman and Mandy Dwyer, thank you very much. And so let's see if there's any questions. We are nearing the end. And then just to let you know, a little housekeeping, the final session starts at 11:30. We're gonna have some emerging practices from a CBO in Chicago, a safe haven, and then a school district in Springfield. So we wanna take a look and see some innovative projects of non-college providers. So that's going to be coming up, and it's going to be in this same, so you can stay in your seat if you want. And you also, if you need to take a little break, you can do that. Let's see, I'm looking in the chat to see if there's any questions. There, Kathy's turned on.
I'm really distracted by the talk about yoga pants.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't see any of this, so I'm catching up right now. It makes me happy.
Yeah.
I've heard that stock in high heels has fallen.
I've heard that too, and purses. And purses too.
Yeah, yeah.
No one's gonna wear high heels. I think even Kamala was wearing like Vans to one of the political rallies, and they're like, ooh.
Yep.
I don't see any questions, so let me make this suggestion and see if this is good for the will of the people. The other group will be coming to join us. So this next session starts at 11:30. So if you want to turn off your video and take a little break, you can do that. But if you, Michelle or Mandy, want to bring up the video that you wanted to share, we could
sure.
have that playing.
Absolutely.
And then if people come in, they get to see it.
Yep. Mandy, do you want to do it?
I will bring it up.
Thanks.
Sure. I have to pull up YouTube now. 2 videos running simultaneously does not always go successful. So be prepared if it takes a little while to load, everyone. And we have our own Dale YouTube, thanks to Kathy Kramer again, who is the star of so many of these. So feel free to go on and see it after you link onto here. I think I'll also share our Dale Facebook page that has a workforce. Really, we said, what do you envision your dream job to be? So we could start looking at which opportunities we might expand into for pre-apprenticeship programs. And that was texted out as well. So we're getting great responses. I think we got over 200. Uh-oh.
Wait, that's
Angela
not it.
was loading,
Oh.
not the fall fun parade. Down below.
There you
And
go.
Kathy makes these shortened snippets of those interviews to be a little bit more palatable. We sent one of the YouTube videos for interviews out about the library to our family literacy grant. Here's